Hi there. Today I've decided what I'm going to do is, like, nobody seems to understand what I'm on about when I talk all the shit I talk about life and history and all that kind of stuff because they haven't read the same books that I have. I've read thousands of books on history, politics, war, religion, health, fitness, all sorts of things. The moon, Mars, stars, everything. Physics. I've read lots of books, thousands. And anyway, yeah, I've got a few here that are ones that influenced me, that all have something to say about what's going on right now. So I'm going to read you some little passages to see if you can get an idea what's going on. So first of all, I'd like to start with this. It says, this is about a period in history where there was a thing called the League of Nations, which was the old version of the United Nations. Another period in history that was very similar to what we're at right now. Anyway, it goes, as for the League of Nations, Stresemann regarded this with no more enthusiasm than most of his countrymen, but he realised that Germany would be better able to defend her international interests from within the League than if she stayed outside it. When she was finally admitted to the League membership in the autumn of 1926, he used this new platform at Geneva to air the grievances of the German minorities under foreign rule, particularly those in Poland. This is from Weimar, oh, can you see that? Weimar and the Rise of Hitler, The Making of the 20th Century, which is a good book. It's thin. If you find this, it's a thin little book. You can read it in an hour. Anyway, that brings me on quite nicely to this, which says, oh shit, I haven't marked this one. What was I going to read? Okay, we'll read this bit. Oh, by the way, that Stresemann thing I was telling you about, right? Stresemann is like the guy that's at the head of the WHO organisation right now, working for China. That's who Stresemann was in that. Same idea. Anyway, here we are at this organisation of the proletarians into a class, and proletariats. The proletariat is the working people, the poor. The working class into a class, and consequently into a political party, is continually being upset again by the competition between the workers themselves. Between the workers themselves. Yeah, but it ever rises up again, stronger, firmer, mightier. It compels legislative recognition of particular interests of the workers by taking advantage of the divisions among the bourgeoisie itself, which is the upper classes. Thus, the 10 Hours Bill in England was carried. That's not what I wanted to read, though. Blah, 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 blah. Damn, I wish I'd marked this. Oh well, that sucks. Because I wanted to read you something here. What would I want to read you? Let's try to read the next bit. Altogether, collisions between the classes of the old society further in many ways, of course, with the development of the proletariat. The bourgeoisie itself finds itself involved in a constant battle, at first with the aristocracy, later on with those portions of the bourgeoisie itself whose interests have become antagonistic to the progress of industry, all the time with the bourgeoisie of foreign countries. That's kind of what's happening right now as well. This isn't what I wanted to read you, though. I remember what I wanted to do. What I wanted to read you was the bit about arming the proletariat. Anyway, I'll keep going here. But I say, all times with the bourgeoisie in foreign countries. In all these battles, it sees itself compelled to appeal to the proletariat, the poor people, to ask for its help, and thus to drag them into the political arena. The bourgeoisie itself, therefore, supplies the proletariat. The bourgeoisie are the cops right now, the middle classes. But the bourgeoisie itself, therefore, supplies the proletariat, that's Antifa and Black Lives Matter, with its own elements of political and general education. In other words, that's called propaganda. In other words, furnishes the proletariat with weapons for fighting the bourgeoisie, like piles of bricks sitting in the middle of the city to be thrown through windows. Anyway, that was the bit I wanted to read you. That's from another little pamphlet that's 85 pages long or so that you should read. And the funny thing is, none of the people that are in Antifa or anyone I've ever met, the first thing I meet anyone that talks about communism or says they're a communist is, have you read the Communist Manifesto? Have you read it? No. Always no. They've never read it. I've yet to find a guy that calls himself a communist or a woman that calls herself a communist who's read this little pamphlet by Marx and Engels, the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. They also haven't read anything about anarchy, and they don't understand anarchy. Everyone seems to think that anarchy means riots and a bunch of thugs. No, anarchy means people like me who have a moral value system, so they don't need law and they don't need leaders. It's not lack of rule, it's having rights, axioms and protocols instead of rules and force. Anyway, and you don't need a government, because you are your own government. So now I'm going to read you this other one. Yeah. This is a very important book for right now. Moods and States 2.6 rather. This is small to read. Often unmentioned, that's the only problem with reading, is you end up fucking your eyes up. Often unmentioned in the literature is the influence on aggressive behaviour of man's mood or state. If ill, fatigued, hot or very hungry, all the things that are kind of happening right now, people are hungry, people are hot, 'cause it's summer and all that. If they're ill, fatigued, hot or very hungry, he can be terrible and touchy, he may lash out and attack. Some have claimed that the urban riots take place mainly during the hot summer months for these reasons. No doubt there are more basic causes, but it is also likely that man's psychological state influences his aggression. Physiological state influences aggression. This is from Understanding Understanding Conflict and War, which is very important. You need to read all of these things to have a fucking basic clue of what's going on right now. Here's another one that's really important. This is one of my favourite books. It tells you things about a particular statesman from history who everybody thinks they know, but all they know is the cartoon character that's been portrayed by the Western allies and not the actual man himself. So I couldn't find the things that I was looking for in this book, but I've got a few good ones to tell you. First of all, I'll give you them afterwards. First I'll read these. What was I going to read? I think I was going to read. I was going to read these two. Okay, shut up, good shit. Shit, I didn't mark. Oh, yeah, this one I'll mark this. Okay, so, yeah. Above all, okay, I'm going to start with this, but it's very difficult to persuade a cannibal not to eat human flesh. According to his ideals, it's the law of nature. Anyway, above all, don't go believing that I'll issue a decree bidding the Navy to eat meat. Bidding the Navy to eat meat. Supposing the prohibition of meat had begun as an article of faith for National Socialism it is certain our movement would not have succeeded. We would at once have been asked the question, then why was the leg of calf created? At present the base of our diet is the potato, yet only 1% of the soil in Germany has been devoted to growing potatoes. If it was 3% alone, we'd have more to eat than is needed. Anyway, he goes on at length here, but my point was, the only time I've ever commented to people that if they want to understand who Hitler was, they have to read this book, Hitler's Table Talk, which is where a stenographer took down the exact words he said over dinner all through the war. Here's another quote. That's the only way you get to know who he truly was, rather than the cartoon character that he himself portrays when he's doing speeches and that is portrayed by the West. Anyway, and you need to know who he was and what he did and what he believed in order to understand what's going on with all the people that are running the world right now who know very well what's going on here. JFK was a young soldier in World War II, and one of the things that he managed to do was get all the way to Berchtesgaden, which was Hitler's kind of hideaway in the country. And after looking all around it and stuff like that, the thing that he said was, Mr. Hitler must have been quite an amazing man. And he said some other things as well, but anyway. This was before Hitler was so demonised. Anyway, you've got to remember this guy was Life Man of the Year cover boy twice. He was also the most loved Prime Minister of Britain, David Lloyd George. He was his darling. He was also the darling of the English king of the time, who was Edward VIII. Anyway, whoever it may be, the fetish of the liberty of the press continues a moral danger par excellence. Moreover, what is called the liberty of the press does not in the least mean that the press is free, but simply that certain potentates are certain potentates are at liberty to direct it as they wish in support of their particular agenda. Anyway, there's a bit more of that. But anyway, that's a little bit of Hitler from Hitler's Table Talk, actual things he said, which is very interesting. If you want to know who he was. He also said things in that book, like he said, he said this in 1941, I think. After this is over, meaning the war, the Jews will have their state of Israel, and they will impose it upon the people of Palestine, and from there they will infiltrate the governments of the world and ferry money back to Israel. Well, it affected international politics. That's exactly what did happen, because they didn't own Israel until 1948, up until that point. And they wanted Palestine because of Jerusalem, but Hitler had made an agreement with the Jews to all leave Germany, take their money, all their stuff, all the possessions, and take it all. He was going to pay to have them transferred to where they wanted to go, whatever it was in the world. And he suggested to them the island of Madagascar, because not very many people live there, and because it's an island, it would give a really strong, safe haven for the Jews. Anyway, there was over 1,500 German officers in World War II were half Jewish. Hitler hated the disabled people, didn't he? Want to kind of wipe them all out and stuff. Apart from all his personal staff were all disabled, every one of them. Anyway, it's funny how the Western world likes to lie about certain people like Gaddafi, Hitler and all these fuckers. Anyway, you gotta know about them. The banality of evil. This is a good one. The banality of evil, listen to this. This is why evil people do good things. This is why good people do evil things. Anyway, in 1963, I can't read this. In 1963, the social philosopher Hannah Arendt, A-R-E-N-D-T, I'm not sure how you say that, Hannah Arendt, published what was to become a classic of our times, Eichmann in Jerusalem. A report on the banality of evil. She provides a determined analysis of the war crimes of and trial of Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi figure who personally arranged for the murder of millions of Jews. Eichmann's defense of these actions was similar to the testimony of other Nazi leaders. Quote, "I was only following orders," sound a bit like the police. As Arendt put it, Eichmann remembered perfectly well that he would have had a bad, this is very small, sorry, I find it hard to read, would have had a bad conscience only if he had not done what he had been ordered to do. There's another, this is a bit of an experiment, there's another experiment I can't remember the name of, but the deal was, there's two of them in fact. There's one where a bunch of dupes, people are told they're going to be part of the study, and then they're in a little room with a machine, and they ask questions to someone in another room, and then if they get the answer wrong, which they do every time, they press all these little switches, each one giving a higher intensity electric shock, right up to 40,000 volts, which would kill you, or 400, I can't remember, a lot of volts. But anyway, every single person that done this, just when the person that was conducting the experiment said to them, please continue, because what they were hearing is each time they gave it a shock, the person in the other room would go, and start screaming and go, stop it, please stop torturing me. But the person running the experiment in the white coat would say, no, please continue with it. And these people, even the ones that were angry about it, would still do it up to the point where they would have killed the person in the other room if it wasn't for the fact that the person in the other room was an actor. There's another one where it's a room full of 6 actors and 1 dupe, and the dupe thinks they're all the same. He's talked to them in the waiting room, and they all talked to him and said, "Oh, is this the first experiment you've done? This the first one?" Stuff like that. They were all the same as him, and they'd done many people. And the idea was that you go in there and they show you different images of 3 lines, 2 that are the same and 1 that's different, and 1 and 2 are the same and 3 is different. And every one of the people before this guy said 1 and 3 was the same. The 2 that were different were the same, and the 2 that were the same were clearly different. And the idea was that the person who was really doing it would go, "Oh fuck, everyone else is saying that one and that one fit, but they don't look like they fit, but I better just say that they do because everyone else is doing it," and everybody's done it. Everybody done that. But anyway, this is another one. This is another experiment. But anyway, where was I? Eichmann. Millions of men, women, children to their deaths. However, the most striking and ardent account of Eichmann is all the ways in which he seemed absolutely ordinary. Half a dozen psychiatrists have certified him as normal, more normal at any rate than I am now after having examined him. One of them was said to have exclaimed, while another had found that his whole psychological outlook, I'm misreading that because I can't read this, it's too small. His attitude towards his wife and children, mother and father, brothers, sisters and friends was not only normal but absolutely adorable. Through the analysis of Eichmann, Arendt reached her famous conclusion, which is, the trouble with Eichmann was precisely that so many were like him, and that the many were neither perverted nor sadistic, that they were and are stillingly and terrifyingly normal. From the viewpoint of all our legal institutions, our moral standards and our judgment, and this normality was much more terrifying than all the atrocities put together, for it implied that this new type of criminal commits his crimes under circumstances that made it well nigh impossible for him to know or feel that he is doing wrong. Bill Gates! Anyway, if you want to know how you're going to survive the next year or so, I would also read this book.